Oh, for the love of all that's holy in this vast, ridiculous universe, why did I ever think teaching would be a good idea? Professor Zixnax thought to himself as he stared at the motley crew of intergalactic students before him. His tentacles twitched with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Especially teaching on a space station. What could possibly go wrong? He chuckled inwardly, his gelatinous form rippling with sarcastic amusement. The classroom, if you could call it that, was a hodgepodge of adaptations to accommodate the various species present. Some students floated in anti-grav bubbles, others were encased in pressurized suits, and a few, well, Zixnax wasn't entirely sure if they were awake or just really good at mimicking inanimate objects. "All right, you lot," Zixnax began, his voice translator struggling to convey both authority and resignation simultaneously. "Today's lesson is on xenobiology and the handling of potentially hazardous life forms. Try not to die, please." The paperwork is a nightmare. A chorus of nervous laughter clicks, and what might have been a muffled scream echoed through the room. Zixnax's gaze fell upon the lone human in the class, sitting there with an insufferable grin plastered across his face. Of course, the Deathworlder finds this amusing, Zixnax thought. Probably considers this a relaxing day at the beach. "Now I'm going to introduce you to a charming little creature from the delightful hellscape known as Nexus 9, Zixnax continued, gesturing towards a sealed containment unit. "It's called a Tauraxian spine ripper. Can anyone tell me why?" The class fell silent, save for the sound of various species trying to inch away from the containment unit without being too obvious about it. The human, Jake Thompson, raised his hand. "Because it rips out spines," he offered, his voice dripping with such heavy sarcasm that even the universal translator picked up on it. Zixnax's eye stalk swiveled towards Jake. "Brilliant deduction, Mr. Thompson. Your species' reputation for keen intellect is clearly well-deserved." The professor's own sarcasm could have curdled milk. "But yes, that's precisely why. This charming creature has a habit of latching onto its prey and, well, you can imagine the rest." A collective shudder ran through the class. Jake, meanwhile, leaned forward, looking intrigued. "Oh no," Zixnax thought. "Here we go." "Your assignment," Zixnax continued, trying to ignore the mixture of terror and excitement emanating from the human, "is to approach the containment unit, observe the spine ripper, and record its behavioral patterns. You will do this without opening the unit or attempting to interact with the creature directly. Am I clear?" "Die clear." A chorus of relieved affirmations filled the room. Jake's hand shot up again. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," Zixnax asked, already regretting his decision to acknowledge the human. "So we're just supposed to look at it?" Jake asked, his disappointment palpable. "That's it." Zixnax's tentacles coiled tightly around his torso, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Mr. Thompson, I assure you, observing a Tauraxian spine ripper from a safe distance is more than enough excitement for one day." Jake slumped back in his seat, muttering something that sounded suspiciously like boring under his breath. As the students began to cautiously approach the containment unit one by one, Zixnax couldn't help but notice the stark contrast in their reactions. The gelatin blob from Epsilon Eridani trembled so violently it nearly liquefied. The quantum shade from the Andromeda galaxy flickered in and out of existence, clearly struggling to maintain its corporeal form in the face of such stress. And then there was Jake, practically bouncing on his toes as he waited for his turn. When it was finally the human's chance to approach, Zixnax felt a sense of foreboding wash over him. Jake sauntered up to the containment unit with all the casualness of someone approaching a vending machine, not a box housing one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. "Ooh, cool," Jake exclaimed, pressing his face against the transparent barrier. "Look at those mandibles and those spines. Hey, Professor, how fast can this thing move?" Zixnax felt a migraine coming on, which was impressive considering his species didn't have a central nervous system. "Mr. Thompson, please step back from the containment unit. The spine ripper is highly agitated by close proximity to potential prey." As if on cue, the creature inside the unit let out a blood-curdling screech and hurled itself against the barrier, its razor-sharp appendages scrabbling for purchase. The entire class recoiled in horror, except for Jake, who just laughed. "Aw, it's like an angry cat. Does it purr too?" Mr. Thompson, Zixnax's voice rose an octave, his translator struggling to convey his mix of anger and panic. "Step away from the unit immediately." Jake reluctantly complied, but not before giving the raging spine ripper a little wave. "See ya later, buddy," he said cheerfully. As Jake returned to his seat, Zixnax noticed the other students giving him a wide berth, their eyes or various sensory organs wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "Great," Zixnax thought. "Now they're more afraid of the human than the actual predator." "Right," Zixnax said, trying to regain control of the class. "Now that we've all had a chance to observe the spine ripper, let's discuss its behavioral patterns. Who would like to start?" The silence that followed was so profound that Zixnax could hear the faint hum of the station's life support systems. He was about to prompt the class again when a tentative appendage rose from the back of the room. "Yes, blorp glorp," Zixnax acknowledged the Jovian gas giant, a species that communicated through a complex series of bubbles and gas emissions. A series of bubbles rose from Blorp Glorp Glorp surface, which the translator interpreted as, "It seems to be extremely aggressive and prone to sudden outbursts of violence." "Excellent observation," Zixnax nodded. "Anyone else?" Jake's hand shot up again. Zixnax briefly considered ignoring him, but knew that would only encourage the human to speak out of turn. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. I think it's just misunderstood," Jake said, his face a perfect mask of innocence. "Maybe it just wants a hug." The class erupted into a cacophony of alarmed noises. A photosynthetic crystalline being from Rigel 7 actually shattered in distress, its fragments tinkling to the floor. Zixnax felt his patience, already stretched thin, finally snap. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your theory. I'm sure the Spine Ripper would be delighted to embrace you, with its mandibles and its spine-ripping appendages." To Zixnax's horror, Jake's face lit up. "Can I? Really?" No, the collective scream from the rest of the class was almost deafening. Zixnax took a moment to compose himself, his gelatinous form rippling with barely contained frustration. "Mr. Thompson, that was sarcasm. A concept I'm sure you're familiar with, given your liberal use of it." Jake had the audacity to look disappointed. "Aw, come on, Prof. I bet I could tame it. Back on Earth, we've domesticated all sorts of predators. Ever heard of a house cat? They're basically tiny murder machines, but we keep them as pets." The class stared at Jake in horror. Zixnax could almost see the thoughts racing through their alien minds, likely along the lines of what kind of death planet produces a species that keeps murder machines as pets. "Mr. Thompson," Zixnax said slowly, as if explaining to a particularly dense child, "a house cat, whatever that might be, is not comparable to a Tauraxian spine ripper. This creature has decimated entire colonies. It's responsible for the extinction of 17 different species. It's not a potential pet, it's a galactic menace." Jake shrugged, a gesture that Zixnax had come to associate with impending disaster. "Sounds like a challenge to me." Before anyone could react, Jake had leaped from his seat and was sprinting towards the containment unit. Time seemed to slow down as Zixnax watched in helpless horror. His tentacles reached out, trying to grab the human, but Jake was too quick. "Mr. Thompson, don't you dare!" Zixnax's warning was cut short as Jake reached the unit, and with a manic grin, hit the release button. The containment field dropped with a faint shimmer. For a moment, nothing happened. The class held its collective breath, those that had breath to hold anyway. Then, with a screech that could curdle blood and did, in the case of the hemoglobin-based lifeforms present, the Spine Ripper burst from its prison. It was a whirlwind of sharp edges and murderous intent, its multiple limbs flailing in a deadly dance as it launched itself straight at Jake. Zixnax closed his eye stalks, unable to watch the impending carnage. But the sounds of ripping flesh and agonized screams never came. Instead, he heard laughter. Zixnax hesitantly opened his eyes, not sure what scene of horror awaited him. What he saw defied all logic and reason. Jake was wrestling with the Spine Ripper, and he was winning. "Woohoo!" Jake whooped as he grappled with the creature, somehow avoiding its deadly appendages. "This is better than bull riding." The Spine Ripper, for its part, seemed utterly confused. It had evolved to be the apex predator on a world that made most death worlds look like paradise. It had never encountered prey that fought back, let alone prey that seemed to be enjoying the encounter. "Hey there, big fella," Jake said, somehow managing to get the creature in a headlock. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" "Yes, you are." The Spine Ripper let out a confused screech, its struggles becoming less coordinated as it tried to process this unprecedented situation. Zixnax watched in stunned silence as Jake maneuvered himself onto the creature's back, riding it like some sort of demented rodeo star. The rest of the class was equally mesmerized, their terror slowly giving way to a reluctant awe. "Look," Prof. Jake called out, grinning from ear to ear. "I think he likes me." The Spine Ripper, tired from its struggles and seemingly resigned to its fate, had stopped trying to disembowel Jake instead. It was making a low rumbling sound that was disturbingly close to purring. Zixnax felt his worldview crumbling around him. Everything he knew about cynobiology, about the natural order of things, was being challenged by this impossible human and his apparent ability to befriend one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. "Mr. Thompson," Zixnax said weakly, "please return the Spine Ripper to its containment unit." Jake pouted, as he guided the now docile creature back towards the unit. "Oh, come on, Prof. Can't I keep him? I promise I'll feed him and take him for walks." "Absolutely not." Zixnax found his voice again, powered by sheer indignation. "This is a classroom, not a pet store. That creature is going back in its unit, and you, Mr. Thompson, are going straight to the principal's office." Jake sighed dramatically but complied, gently coaxing the Spine Ripper back into its containment unit. The creature went willingly, even nuzzling against Jake's hand as the force field reactivated. As Jake turned to leave, Zixnax couldn't help but notice the looks of awe on the faces of the other students. Great, he thought. I'll never be able to scare them with dangerous creatures again. Not after they've seen a human treat one like an overgrown puppy. Class dismissed, Zixnax said wearily. And Mr. Thompson, Next time, please try to remember that do not engage means exactly that, even for humans. Jake grinned unrepentantly as he headed for the door. No promises, Prof. But hey, at least class wasn't boring, right? As the door closed behind Jake, Zixnax slumped against his desk, his gelatinous form quivering with exhaustion. He glanced at the spine ripper, now curled up contentedly in its containment unit, then at the shell-shocked faces of his remaining students. Right, he said, his voice tinged with hysteria. Who wants to learn about the mating habits of Venusian acid slugs? The resulting stampede for the exit was almost as terrifying as the spine ripper had been, almost. Left alone in the classroom, Zixnax turned to the apparently tamed galactic menace. You and me both, buddy, he said to the purring creature. Humans, am I right? The spine ripper chittered in what Zixnax could have sworn was agreement. Word of Jake's exploit spread through the space station faster than a quantum entanglement virus by lunchtime. The cafeteria was buzzing with excited chatter, all centered around the crazy human who had wrestled a spine ripper and lived to tell the tale. Jake, for his part, was basking in the attention. He sat at a table surrounded by a diverse group of alien students, all hanging on his every word as he recounted his adventure. ... And then I looked into its eyes, all 17 of them, and I saw a spark of intelligence there, Jake was saying, gesticulating wildly. That's when I knew we could be friends. A hive mind collective from Betelgeuse, consisting of thousands of tiny insects forming a vaguely humanoid shape, leaned in closer. But were you not afraid? They asked in unison, their collective voice a strange harmony. Jake laughed, a sound that still made some of the more sensitive species flinch. Afraid? Nah, where I come from, we have this saying, fortune favors the bold. Besides, it was just like playing with my neighbor's Rottweiler back home. Rottweiler, a crystalline being from Antares, chimed in, its facets reflecting Jake's grin in a kaleidoscope of confusion. Yeah, it's a type of dog. Big, strong, looks scary, but is actually a total softie if you know how to handle them, Jake explained, then paused, noticing the blank looks. You guys do know what dogs are, right? The silence that followed was answer enough. Jake sighed, shaking his head in mock disappointment. Man, you all are missing out. Dogs are the best. Loyal, friendly, always happy to see you. Some of them are even better at hunting than the spine ripper. This statement caused a ripple of disbelief through his audience. A methane-breathing blob from Jupiter's moons burbled skeptically, its translator struggling to keep up with its rapid gas exchanges. Impossible. The spine ripper is the most efficient killing machine in the known galaxy. Jake just smirked. You clearly haven't seen a pack of wolves in action, or a tiger, or heck, even a determined house cat can give you a run for your money. The aliens exchanged worried glances. One of them, a silicon-based life form from a heavy gravity world, raised a crystalline appendage. Jake, what exactly is Earth like? Jake's eyes lit up, and the aliens knew they were in for quite a tale. Jake leaned back in his chair, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Earth? Oh, it's a lovely little death trap we call home. Imagine a planet where the very air can kill you if it moves too fast. The silicon-based lifeform's crystalline structure vibrated in what could only be interpreted as fear. The air kills. Oh yeah, Jake nodded enthusiastically. We call them tornadoes, hurricanes, typhoons, depends on where they happen. Basically, the air gets angry and decides to rearrange the landscape. Buildings, trees, occasionally cows all get tossed around like salad. A collective gasp rippled through his audience. Jake, warming to his subject, continued with relish. And that's just the air. Don't even get me started on the ground. Sometimes it gets bored and decides to shake things up a bit. We call those earthquakes. Or it might split open and spew out molten rock. Those are volcanoes. The hive mind collective buzzed in agitation, its component insects swirling in chaotic patterns. Your planet actively tries to kill you, they asked in unison, their collective voice tinged with horror. Jake chuckled. Actively. Now I'd say it's more of a passive-aggressive relationship. Earth throws these challenges at us, and we adapt. It's like a really high-stakes game of tag. The methane blob burbled rapidly, its translator struggling to keep up. When it finally managed to form coherent words, it asked, "But how do you survive?" We're resourceful, Jake shrugged. We build structures to withstand the winds, predict the ground's tantrums, and sometimes we even hop into the molten rock for fun. This last statement caused such a commotion that a passing professor, a being composed entirely of electromagnetic waves, flickered in annoyance. You enter molten rock. For entertainment, the crystalline being from Antares asked, its facets reflecting a mix of disbelief and horrified fascination. Well, not exactly, Jake admitted. But we do have these things called hot springs where we soak in heated water. And some folks enjoy volcano surfing. It's exactly what it sounds like. The aliens at the table exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. It was the silicon-based life form who finally voiced what they were all thinking. Jake, are all humans like you? Jake burst out laughing, a sound that made several nearby aliens jump. Like me? Nah, I'm pretty tame compared to some. You should meet my Uncle Bob. Now there's a guy who knows how to wrestle an alligator. Alligator, the hive mind collective queried, their form rippling with curiosity. Oh, it's this big reptile with lots of teeth and a bad attitude, Jake explained casually. Lives in swamps, likes to eat anything it can catch. Uncle Bob once got into an argument with one over a fish he'd caught. The mental image of a human arguing with a large, toothy reptile over prey was almost too much for his audience to process. The methane blob was burbling so rapidly it was in danger of evaporating. Jake, oblivious to the existential crisis he was causing, continued cheerfully. But that's nothing compared to the stuff we do for fun. Ever heard of skydiving? Before any of the aliens could respond, not that they were capable of much response at this point, a familiar gelatinous form approached the table. Professor Zixnax had apparently recovered enough from the morning's excitement to venture into the cafeteria. Mr. Thompson, Zixnax said, his voice a mixture of exasperation and resignation, I see you're regaling your classmates with tales of your homeworld. Jake grinned up at the professor. Just giving them a little Earth 101. Prof, did you know they've never heard of dogs, or alligators, or skydiving? Zixnax's eyes stalked swiveled towards the group of shell-shocked aliens. Given their current state, I'm not sure that was wise, Mr. Thompson. We don't have enough therapy pods to treat the entire student body for post-traumatic stress disorder. Aw, come on, Prof. Jake protested. I'm just sharing some cultural exchange. Isn't that what this whole intergalactic education program is about? Zixnax's gelatinous form rippled in what might have been a sigh. Cultural exchange, Mr. Thompson, not trauma induction. I've just come from a rather interesting meeting with the principal about this morning's incident. Jake sat up straighter, his grin fading slightly. Oh yeah, what did the big boss have to say about my new friend? Your new friend, Zixnax said, stressing the words, is being transferred to a more secure facility. Apparently, your little display this morning has the xenobiology department in an uproar. They're talking about rewriting textbooks. Jake's face lit up. Really? Cool, do I get credit for that? Maybe extra marks on my next assignment. Zixnax's eyes stalks drooped in defeat. Mr. Thompson, you nearly caused an intergalactic incident, traumatized an entire class, and forced us to reevaluate centuries of established xenobiological principles. Your next assignment is to write a detailed report on proper safety protocols and why they should be followed. Jake's shoulders slumped. Aw man, can't I just wrestle another space monster instead? The collective gasp from the surrounding aliens was almost enough to depressurize the cafeteria. Absolutely not, Zixnax said firmly. In fact, you're banned from the xenobiology lab until further notice. We can't risk you trying to make friends with the acidic slime molds from Betelgeuse V or attempting to pet the quantum phase spiders. Jake perked up. There are quantum phase spiders. Awesome. Do they vibrate in multiple dimensions? Can they walk through walls? Ooh, do they shoot lasers from their eyes? Zixnax felt a migraine coming on, which was quite a feat for a species without a central nervous system. This is exactly why you're banned, Mr. Thompson. Your enthusiasm, while admirable, is a safety hazard. But Prof. Jake protested. How am I supposed to learn about alien life if I can't interact with it? The same way every other student does, Zixnax retorted. Through carefully controlled observations, detailed holographic simulations, and extensive theoretical study. Jake slumped in his chair, the very picture of dejection. That sounds boring, he mumbled. Zixnax's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been sympathy. Mr. Thompson, I understand that your species thrives on challenge and excitement, but here at the Intergalactic Academy of Xenostudies, we prioritize safety and methodical research. You must understand that not every species is as resilient as humans. Jake glanced around at his alien classmates, noting their still shocked expressions and the way they seemed to be trying to subtly inch away from him. He sighed. I guess you're right, Prof. I'll try to tone it down a bit. Thank you, Zixnax said, genuine relief in his voice. Now, I believe you have a safety report to write. Jake nodded glumly and stood up. As he gathered his things, he turned to his alien classmates with a grin. Hey, don't look so glum, guys. Tell you what, once I'm done with this report, how about I teach you all how to play rugby? The resulting panic nearly caused a stampede in the cafeteria. Zixnax watched in resigned horror as Jake's alien classmates fled in all directions, some using appendages they probably didn't even know they had. Mr. Thompson, Zixnax said wearily, perhaps it's best if you focus on your academics for now. Leave the cultural exchanges for supervised environments. Jake shrugged, seemingly unperturbed by the chaos he'd caused. If you say so, Prof. But you're all missing out. Rugby's great fun. As Jake sauntered out of the cafeteria, Zixnax turned to survey the damage. Overturned chairs, spilled food, some of which was still trying to crawl away, and the lingering aroma of stressed alien pheromone filled the air. I'm getting too old for this, Zixnax thought to himself. Maybe I should have listened to my spawning parent and gone into quantum mechanics instead. Nice, safe quantum mechanics, where the worst that can happen is accidentally unraveling the fabric of space-time. But as he watched Jake's retreating form, Zixnax couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. Humans were chaotic, yes, and downright terrifying at times, but they were also pushing the boundaries of what the galactic community thought was possible. Who knows, Zixnax mused as he began helping the cafeteria staff clean up. Maybe we could all learn a thing or two from the Deathworlders, preferably from a safe distance though. And so life at the Intergalactic Academy of Xenostudies continued, forever changed by the arrival of one enthusiastic human and his unique approach to interspecies relations. The Taraxian Spine Ripper, now dubbed Fluffy by Jake, became the subject of numerous research papers and was begrudgingly reclassified from extreme danger. Avoid at all costs to extreme danger, unless you're a crazy human. As for Jake, he did eventually write that safety report. It was, to Zixnax's simultaneous horror and admiration, titled 101 Ways to Safely Befriend Dangerous Alien Lifeforms, A Human's Guide to Interstellar Cuddles. The report was immediately classified and locked away in the deepest vaults of the Academy. Some knowledge, the faculty decided, was too dangerous to be shared with the galaxy at large. But that's another story for another time. As the academic year progressed, the Intergalactic Academy of Xenostudies found itself in a constant state of barely controlled change, all centered around one particularly enthusiastic human student. Jake Thompson had become something of a legend, or a cautionary tale, depending on who you asked. The Xenobiology department had to reinforce their containment units after Jake's third playdate with various dangerous specimens. The Xenopsychology faculty were working overtime trying to counsel traumatized alien students who'd witnessed Jake's escapades. And poor Professor Zixnax had developed a nervous tic in his left eye stalk that flared up every time he heard the word human. But despite all the headaches and near disasters, something unexpected was happening. The Academy was changing. It started small. A timid Venusian puff cloud, inspired by Jake's fearlessness, volunteered to handle a mildly acidic compound in chemistry class. A Jovian gas giant, usually too dense to participate in physical activities, joined Jake for his morning jogs around the station's gravitation ring. Even the faculty found themselves affected. Professor Zixnax, much to his own surprise, caught himself thinking, what would Jake do when faced with particularly challenging research problems? He promptly scheduled himself for a mental health evaluation after that incident. As the final exams approached, the Academy was buzzing with an energy it had never known before. Students from all corners of the galaxy were pushing their boundaries, taking risks, calculated ones, much to the relief of the insurance department, and making breakthroughs in their studies. And at the center of it all was Jake, blissfully unaware of the revolution he'd sparked. On the day of the final Xenobiology practical exam, the entire Academy held its breath. Jake had been barred from interacting directly with any specimens, but he was allowed to advise a team of his alien classmates on how to approach the challenge. The challenge: collecting a DNA sample from a protean shapeshifter, a notoriously elusive and paranoid species that could mimic any form of matter. As Jake's team entered the exam room, Professor Zixnax felt his gelatinous form quiver with anticipation and dread. Please, he thought, don't let this be the day the Academy finally explodes. What followed was 2 hours of the most unorthodox xenobiology practicum in the history of the galaxy. Jake's strategy involved a complex plan that included bad jokes, interpretive dance, and what he called the power of friendship against all odds. And in defiance of several laws of physics, it worked. Not only did they collect the DNA sample, but the protean shapeshifter asked if it could enroll in the next academic year. It had apparently developed a taste for bad puns and wanted to learn more. As the exam results were tallied, Professor Zixnax found himself standing next to the Academy's principal, an ancient, multi-dimensional being known only as the Administrator. Well, the Administrator's voice echoed in Zixnax's mind. This has certainly been an interesting year. Zixnax's eye stalks drooped. I apologize for all the chaos, sir. If you want my resignation. Resignation, the Administrator's form shimmered with what might have been laughter. My dear Zixnax, do you realize what's happened here? Zixnax blinked in confusion. We've had more property damage and insurance claims than in the past century. Well, yes, the Administrator conceded, but look beyond that. Look at our students. Zixnax turned his eye stalks towards the crowd of students celebrating the end of exams. What he saw made his scientific mind reel. Species that had never interacted before were mingling freely. A hive mind collective was teaching a silicon crystal being how to high-five with its 1,000 tiny appendages. A quantum shade, usually too shy to materialize fully, was solidly corporeal and laughing at a joke told by a methane blob. And there, in the center of it all, was Jake Thompson, arm wrestling with the tentacle of the Jovian gas giant while simultaneously explaining the concept of knock-knock jokes to the protean shapeshifter. I don't understand, Zixnax said, his voice filled with wonder. The Administrator's form pulsed gently. What you're seeing, my dear professor, is the future. Jake Thompson and his human unpredictability have done what millennia of diplomatic efforts couldn't. They've brought the galaxy together, but he breaks all the rules, Zixnax protested weakly. Exactly, the Administrator said. And in doing so, he's taught us all that some rules are meant to be broken, or at least creatively reinterpreted. As Zixnax watched Jake demonstrate what appeared to be a human dance move called the worm to a group of fascinated alien students, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. So Zixnax said slowly, "What happens now?" The administrator's form sparkled with excitement. Now we prepare for next year. I've received word that we'll be having not 1, but 5 human students joining us. Zixnax felt his gelatinous form go weak. F5. But sir, the academy, it might not survive. It'll do more than survive, Zixnax the administrator interrupted. It'll thrive. In fact, I'm putting you in charge of our new human integration program. Your first task is to revise the academy handbook. I believe we need to add a few footnotes. As the administrator drifted away, leaving a stunned Zixnax in its wake, Jake bounded up, his face split in a wide grin. "Hey, Prof," he said, clapping Zixnax on what passed for a shoulder, causing the professor to wobble dangerously. "Guess what? I've been telling everyone about this great Earth game called paintball, and they're all excited to try it. Think we could set up a course for next semester?" Zixnax looked at Jake's eager face, then at the diverse group of alien students all watching expectantly. He thought about the upcoming year, with not 1 but 5 humans running amok. He thought about the property damage, the insurance claims, the endless reports he'd have to file. Then he thought about the breakthroughs they'd made, the boundaries they'd pushed, the friendships that had formed. Zixnax felt his left eye stalk twitch. Then, to his own surprise, he felt his mouth analogues curve into what could only be described as a smile. "You know what, Mr. Thompson? Why not? But I have one condition." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What's that, Prof?" Zixnax drew himself up to his full gelatinous height. "I get to be on your team." The cheer that went up could be heard all the way to the neighboring star system. As Zixnax found himself surrounded by excited students of all species, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this human chaos wasn't so bad after all. And so, as the Intergalactic Academy of Sauna Studies prepared for a new year of unprecedented challenges and adventures, a new saying began to circulate among the staff. "When life gives you humans, make human aid." Nobody was quite sure what it meant, but they all agreed it sounded very profound and very, very human.